Have you ever tried to pull away from someone, hoping they'd chase you only to be met with silence so loud it echoed your own doubt? You deleted the thread, you stopped texting, you went cold, you told yourself you were done, that this was no contact, that this was power, but then came the silence, and the silence started playing tricks on your mind. What if she never reaches out? What if she never even notices you're gone? What if the silence only proves you were forgettable? You see, no contact is often dressed up as strategy, but underneath, it's usually grief in disguise. It's the pain of wanting to be wanted, but pretending we don't care, and men, especially men, are told that this withdrawal, this stoic silence is strength. But is it, or is it just another way to hide our vulnerability and call it control? What if I told you that there is something far more powerful than no contact? Something that doesn't just punish her absence, but transforms your presence. Something that doesn't make her miss you through silence, but makes her remember you through self-evolution, through subtle psychological rewiring, through the quiet return of dignity that doesn't scream but radiates. Because the truth is, no contact might remove you from her life, but this removes her from your nervous system. You didn't expect to care this much. Maybe you thought you'd be the one who walked away first. Or maybe you stayed longer than you should have, giving, hoping, bending until you finally said enough. You told yourself this was it. You were going no contact. You were taking your power back, and maybe for a moment that felt like strength, like reclaiming your edges. But now you find yourself checking her Instagram at 2 a.m., staring at that blank chat box like it owes you an explanation, hoping that silence, that stubborn wall of non-communication, will somehow bring you peace, while secretly praying it might bring her back. This is the part no one tells you about. No contact isn't really silence, it's noise, internal noise. It's the sound of every what if, clawing at the inside of your chest. It's the way your mind keeps playing back the last thing she said, like a song that won't let you go. It's how you try to act fine, while your nervous system is still begging for closure, for understanding, for someone to see that you're hurting. And here's the thing, as a therapist, I've watched men armor themselves in silence and call it healing. But what they're often doing is trying to control pain rather than feel it. You see, no contact is a tool, but it's not the strategy. Because true power doesn't come from withdrawing, it comes from transforming. So I want you to imagine a different version of yourself. One who is not just sitting in silence, waiting for her reaction, but one who is learning to respond to himself every single day. A man who isn't focused on whether she texts, but is tuned into the conversations he's been avoiding, with his own loneliness, his own needs, his own unmet longings. This is where it begins, because the strategy that's more powerful than no contact is reconnection. Not with her, but with you. You see, most men live in performance. They ask, did I say the right thing? Was I enough for her? Did I play the game well? But rarely do they stop and ask, what version of me kept choosing someone who didn't see me clearly? Because when the ache of rejection rises, we often miss the deeper pain underneath, the pain of feeling invisible to ourselves long before we were invisible to her. So instead of disappearing from her world, what if you reappeared in your own? What does that look like? It's not dramatic. It's not about throwing out your phone or running into the arms of the next warm body you find. No, this is quieter, this is slower, this is intimate, this is asking, what am I truly seeking right now? And the answer is rarely her. It's usually connection, tenderness, the feeling of being enough, the feeling of being chosen. And when you understand that, the power dynamic changes. Suddenly, no contact isn't about withholding. It's about choosing where to place your attention. You stop trying to send a message through your silence and start learning how to read the messages that your body, your soul, your patterns have been trying to tell you all along. There is a man I once worked with, let's call him Daniel. He went no contact with a woman who'd ghosted him after 3 months of what felt like deep connection. He was angry, embarrassed, he told himself she didn't deserve me. He deleted her number, blocked her on every platform. But every day he'd still wake up wondering if she thought about him. That's the thing about silence. It can easily become obsession when it's not paired with clarity. So I asked him something simple. What is your silence trying to protect you from? He didn't answer right away. But eventually he whispered, the feeling that maybe I was never important to begin with. That is the wound. And that is where we must begin. You see, real healing is not loud, it's not a dramatic gesture, it's not blocking her and hoping she notices. It's sitting with your own sense of worth and asking, why did I tie so much of it to her approval? A strategy more powerful than no contact is this, it's radical self-ownership. It's turning the attention away from her and toward the mirror. It's recognizing that her silence is not proof of your unworthiness. It's simply her absence. It does not define your presence. When you choose this path, something begins to shift. You stop needing to prove your value to her and begin embodying your value with you. You start showing up in ways that are subtle but profound. You sleep a little deeper, you eat with more awareness, you speak with more clarity, you listen to your own needs not to manipulate an outcome, but to experience yourself again. Because the truth is, she may never come back, she may never explain, she may never offer the apology you hoped for. But the gift isn't in her return, it's in your return to self, and when you begin to reconnect, not with her image, but with your essence, you stop performing. You start becoming, and that is a far greater power than silence, because you are no longer trying to make her miss you. You're learning how to stop missing you. Now let's keep going. There's a moment, a quiet, still moment, that happens after the storm of no contact settles. It's the pause between checking your phone and realizing you're no longer waiting for it to ring. It's subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it's there, and in that moment a deeper question emerges. If I'm not obsessing over her anymore, who am I obsessing over now? Because this is where many men get stuck. They remove her from their life, yes, but then they replace her with productivity, with control, with distraction. They say, I'm over her, but they still build their identity around proving they've moved on. They hit the gym harder. They overwork, they flirt just to feel like they still have it, but it's not freedom, it's reaction. It's still about her, just dressed in new clothes, and that is why no contact, by itself, often fails. Because it's not about how loud your silence is, it's about how honest your stillness becomes. There's something I call emotional reclamation. It's the process of slowly retrieving the parts of you that you handed over too easily, the compromises you made in the name of love, the pieces of your masculinity you softened, hoping to be accepted, the intuition you silenced, pretending red flags were just shadows. This is the work, and it's uncomfortable because reclaiming those parts isn't glamorous, it's not cinematic. It's not you glowing up on social media while she watches from afar. It's you sitting on your bed at midnight, realizing you ignored your gut, that you begged for breadcrumbs, that you needed something from her you hadn't yet given to yourself. And still, even here, you're not weak, you're just waking up. You see, most of what we call heartbreak is actually identity loss. You didn't just lose her, you lost the version of yourself that felt whole when she was around. You miss who you were when you were with her. You miss being chosen. You miss being needed. And now you wonder if that version of you still exists without her mirror reflecting you back to yourself. But here's where the deeper strategy begins. You stop trying to be the man she wanted and start becoming the man you respect. A man whose confidence is not based on who desires him, but on who he refuses to abandon, and that starts with you. So I want to ask you something gently. What part of you did you betray in order to keep her? Was it the part of you that asked for more attention but felt needy? Was it the part of you that wanted to move slower, but feared she'd leave if you didn't match her pace? Was it the part of you that noticed her inconsistencies but smiled through them to avoid a fight? Those parts of you matter. Because the strategy that's more powerful than no contact is not about boundaries with her, it's about boundaries with yourself. It's learning to say, I will no longer abandon myself in the name of being loved. This is not about pride. It's not about ego. It's not even about teaching her a lesson. It's about honoring the version of you that kept quiet when he should have spoken, who felt lonely even while lying next to her, who accepted less because he didn't believe more was possible. In this version of you, he's ready to come back home, not through distractions, not through Tinder, not through spiritual bypassing where you forgive her, just to feel enlightened. No, he comes home through honest reflection, through choosing environments that nourish him, through saying no to people who want access, but not intimacy. I had a man once tell me, I feel like I'm invisible without her, and I asked, were you ever truly visible with her? He paused. Then he said, I think I just needed someone to see me because I hadn't really been seeing myself. There it is. When you go no contact, it's easy to make her the villain, to say she was manipulative, emotionally immature, a narcissist, and sometimes, yes, those things are true, but more often we label her as toxic so we don't have to face the parts of ourselves that volunteered for the pattern. So what's more powerful than silence? Accountability. You don't have to blame her to grow from this. You just have to stop betraying your own signals, and this takes practice. You learn to pause before replying to a message you know will reopen the wound. You sit with the ache instead of numbing it with new attention. You write instead of vent. You rest instead of chase. You stop trying to get her back and start trying to get you back. And here's the miracle of it. When you truly begin this process, something shifts in your energy. You're no longer a man trying to be chosen. You're a man who chooses. You become magnetic. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because grounded men are rare. Stillness is rare, ownership is rare, and you are becoming rare. So while she might remember the silence you gave her, she'll never forget the peace you gave yourself. Because that peace, that grounded presence that is unforgettable, and the beauty is, you don't need her to see it. You just need to stop hiding it from yourself. Let's go deeper. You begin to realize something strange happens when you stop waiting for closure. You begin creating it yourself, not as a final sentence in the story, but as a soft landing place for your own heart. You stop needing an apology to forgive. You stop needing a conversation to move on. Because you understand that closure was never really about them giving you anything. It was always about you reclaiming the right to live without unanswered questions poisoning your peace. This is where power starts to feel different. It doesn't look like control anymore. It looks like compassion. It's not in the revenge glow-up or the perfect comeback message. It's in the subtle ways you stop betraying yourself. You get quiet not to punish but to listen. You stop reacting to every emotional impulse. You begin learning the difference between being triggered and being touched. And now you've stopped chasing her absence. You've started being present with your presence, because the truth is no contact is often used as a weapon. I'll disappear so she knows what she lost. But what if you disappeared so you could discover what you've been ignoring? There's a difference between silence and suppression. The first is sacred, the second is self-abandonment. And in this silence, many men meet parts of themselves they've never been introduced to. The boy who never learned to say I need. The son who felt like being soft was dangerous. The lover who was taught that his vulnerability would scare her away. This is not a war with her. This is a reunion with you. And it's terrifying, because in the quiet old ghosts return, your fear of being unlovable, your craving for affirmation. That deeply buried belief that if someone leaves you, it must be because you weren't enough. But that belief is the real enemy, not her. So this is the new strategy, not no contact, but full contact with your inner world. You begin journaling, not just what happened, but what it triggered in you. You begin asking yourself questions that matter. Why did I need her attention so badly? What part of me equated her presence with proof that I mattered? Why was I so afraid to express my needs? This kind of contact, this radical inner intimacy, is what transforms you. It breaks the loop of performing for love. It ends the cycle of chasing people who mirror your wounds instead of your worth. And now you're no longer a man in limbo. You're a man in process. You walk slower, you speak more clearly. You stop giving pieces of yourself to people who only want to taste you, but never digest your truth. And the irony, this version of you, the one who isn't trying so hard to be noticed, is the one who draws others like a magnet. Because confidence isn't about being louder, it's about being deeply rooted, and there's nothing more compelling than a man who doesn't need to convince anyone of his value. Not even himself. I remember sitting across from a client. His name was Amir, 38, recently divorced. He had done everything the world told him to do, got in shape, read the books, went no contact, stayed strong, but when he spoke, there was a tremble in his voice. I still feel invisible, he said, even to me. And I asked him, what would it look like to become visible to yourself again? He didn't answer with words. He closed his eyes, he breathed, and then he wept, because sometimes the most courageous thing a man can do is not walk away from her. It's walk back to himself, and here's where it all begins to click. This isn't about whether she misses you. Whether she realizes what she had, whether she'll regret, that's all ego, that's all rooted in the same hunger for external proof. What's more powerful than her regret is your rebirth, the rebirth of your voice, your self-trust, your emotional awareness. Your ability to sit with pain, not run from it, not numb it, but sit with it as if it were a teacher and not an enemy. This is how we become men of depth, men who are not afraid of discomfort, men who don't manipulate or withdraw just to feel in control. Men who can love fully without disappearing into the people they choose, because when you master this deeper strategy, you stop measuring power by silence. And you start measuring it by integration. Am I living in alignment with what I know now? Am I honoring the version of me who doesn't need to be rescued? Am I making space for love not from others first, but from within? That is what creates emotional gravity. That is what breaks the cycle of ghosting, begging, blocking, chasing, deleting, relapsing, repeating. Because the story isn't about her anymore. It's about how you become someone who no longer gives his soul away in exchange for scraps of attention. You've already started. What do you do with all this energy now? The thoughts, the echoes, the little loops in your mind that still trace her silhouette, even when you've blocked her, muted her, erased her name from your phone like it never existed there at all. The mind is a beautiful saboteur. It remembers what you try to forget, especially when feelings were unspoken, unfinished, unresolved. And so the question becomes, how do you transmute that energy instead of just repressing it? Because repression, it's just delayed explosion. It stores inside your body like trapped static. You carry it in your posture, in your digestion, in the way your shoulders rise every time a notification pings, hoping it might be her. That's not healing, that's limbo. So now we bring that energy home, not to silence it, but to move it. You begin by asking yourself not what did she do to me, but where in me did this hit the hardest? Was it the way she withdrew without explanation? The intimacy followed by detachment, the warmth that turned cold without warning, or maybe it was the way she made you feel, like you were almost enough. Almost, but not quite. That word almost, it leaves a bruise that doesn't show. It makes you second, guess every part of yourself. It tells you, if I had done more, been more, given more, maybe she would have stayed. And you carry that ache like a whisper behind your confidence. Smiling on the outside, starving on the inside, but let me say this clearly, her inability to stay present does not mean you were not enough. It may simply mean you were too much for someone who wasn't ready for depth. This is not about blaming her, but it is about not blaming you. Because when you're used to proving your worth, you tend to attract people who make you audition for love. And once that becomes a pattern, you start seeing every breakup as a test you failed instead of a door that life gently closed so you could re-enter yourself. And when you re-enter yourself, you stop running, you begin noticing your own avoidance, how you distract yourself with logic when emotion knocks at the door. How you try to turn heartache into a spreadsheet analyzing her messages, decoding her behavior, rationalizing her departure. But heartbreak isn't a math problem, it's poetry, messy, unfinished, aching, and like poetry, it needs to be felt, not fixed. So you write, you speak to yourself gently, you go for walks without needing to speed through them. You let the tears come when they need to, without calling yourself weak for it. You stop explaining your process to anyone who wouldn't understand it anyway. And eventually you notice the grip loosens, you stop flinching when someone says her name, you stop checking if she's watched your story. You stop performing pain for sympathy or pretending to be over it for validation because you are no longer trying to win the breakup. You're trying to win yourself back. This is the essence of emotional alchemy, the art of transforming your longing into awareness, your anger into clarity, your ache into creativity. You begin to see that every person who triggered your abandonment wasn't just hurting you. They were reflecting back the parts of you that needed attention. They were showing you where love still feels unsafe, and you stop resenting them for it, because now you've taken your power back, not by punishing their absence, but by nurturing your own presence. I once had a man tell me, I feel like I gave her everything, and I asked, did you ever give that to yourself first? He paused. No, I thought if I gave enough she'd stay. That's the old script, love as transaction, worth as performance, presence as a reward to be earned. But here we rewrite that script. You stop chasing people who make you feel seen. You start seeing yourself, not in a superficial way, not in the mirror, not in how many people swipe right on you, not in how many compliments you get from strangers who don't know your soul. No, you see yourself in your quiet courage, in the way you show up for your friends even when you're breaking inside, in the way you speak truth even when your voice trembles, in the way you choose emotional honesty over polished perfection. And when you see yourself, something else changes too. Your standards rise not from bitterness but from embodiment. You no longer tolerate breadcrumbing, hot hand, cold attention, emotionally lazy connections, not because you're better than anyone, but because you've finally tasted self-respect, and now you crave only what nourishes that. And if she comes back, you don't panic, you don't rush to reply. You don't analyze the punctuation of her text message. You feel, you assess, you stay with your truth. You ask, is this returning love, or is this familiar pain wearing a different outfit? And you trust yourself to know the difference. Because you are no longer afraid of starting over, you are afraid of settling for what almost loved you. And when a man gets to this place, he is free, not because he no longer wants love, but because he no longer needs it to feel whole. He is the home he was searching for in someone else. There's something sacred that happens when a man learns to sit with his unmet needs without trying to outsource them. He no longer waits for a woman to text him back to feel wanted. He no longer needs someone to label him as the one, just to believe he's lovable. He begins to understand something revolutionary, that being desired is not the same as being valued. Desire is fleeting, it comes and goes like waves on sand, but value is rooted. It's felt in how you show up when no one is watching. It's in how you speak to yourself when the room is quiet. It's in the decisions you make when no one else is there to validate them. And that's why this strategy, this deeper alternative to no contact, is not about absence at all. It's about embodiment. No contact may teach you how to survive her leaving, but embodiment teaches you how to live fully, even when no one is choosing you. Because here's what no one says out loud: healing is lonely sometimes. You'll sit with urges to reach out. You'll rehearse texts in your head that you never send. You'll remember the way she looked at you the first time she made you feel seen. And then you'll feel a tightness in your chest, wondering if that look was ever real, but you stay. You stay in that moment, you don't run from it, you don't label it as weakness, you honor it, because pain when honored becomes fuel for transformation. And when you're no longer afraid to feel, you become dangerous, in the best possible way, not because you can hurt people, but because you can no longer be manipulated by attention. You no longer sell yourself for crumbs, you no longer confuse chemistry with connection. That's the real shift. You stop asking, does she miss me? And start asking, do I miss me? You stop wondering if she regrets leaving and start asking, did I ever really stay for me while I was with her? And that question breaks open something inside. You begin to remember your own rhythm. You start dancing again, even when no one's watching. You cook for yourself with intention. You show up for your goals without needing applause. You rebuild trust with yourself in small, quiet moments. You look in the mirror, not to fix what's broken, but to witness what's beautiful. This is the man who becomes unforgettable, because he's no longer chasing emotional safety. He is emotional safety. And the women who encounter him feel it, not because he's trying to impress them, but because he carries the weight of a man who's made peace with his pain. And when you get here, something else unfolds. You forgive her, not to let her off the hook, not to reopen the door, but because you realize you don't need the story to end the way you wanted it to. You don't need her to say sorry. You don't need her to explain why she left. You don't even need her to grow, because now her growth is not your responsibility. Your closure is not in her awareness, it's in your acceptance. And here's what acceptance sounds like. She came into my life for a reason. She left when she needed to. And now I'm choosing to continue without resentment, without regret, and without the need for revenge. I am not broken. I am becoming. That is more powerful than silence, because silence can be strategy. But embodiment is wisdom. You carry your scars not as shame, but as symbols of how deeply you once loved and how fiercely you came back to yourself. And this kind of man, this emotionally intelligent, integrated, embodied man, he is not waiting to be chosen. He is the one who chooses. He chooses presence. He chooses peace. He chooses truth over comfort, depth over drama, selfless, backed over temporary affection, and if she returns, you don't run to her, you don't push her away. You listen, not to her words, but to your body, to your breath, to your gut, to the quiet knowing that says, I don't need to go back to understand the lesson. And this is when you finally feel it, not the relief of getting her back, but the liberation of never having to lose yourself again. And now it's quiet, but it's not the suffocating quiet that used to haunt you, the one that felt like waiting. This quiet is different. It feels clean, like standing on the shore after a storm. You can still see the footprints of who you used to be, but they're fading now, slowly washing away in the tide of your own healing. You've come a long way. There's no more pretending, no more playing strong while aching inside. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone, not even to yourself. Because now you know, strength isn't in how stoic you appear, it's in how tenderly you're willing to care for your own heart. You were never too sensitive, never too emotional, never too much. You were simply surrounded by people who didn't have the capacity to hold you. But now you hold you, and that makes all the difference. This isn't a victory lap. This isn't some grand declaration that you've figured everything out. You're still learning, still growing, still stumbling some days, but the man you are now, he no longer confuses chaos with connection. He no longer calls silence strength when it's really just fear in a tuxedo, because you've learned that the strategy more powerful than no contact is presence with self. It's staying emotionally honest, even when it's easier to ghost your own needs. It's remaining committed to your values, even when your body still misses hers. It's the discipline to stay open in a world that told you to shut down to survive, and that is spiritual maturity. You don't just cut her off, you release her, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Not because she doesn't deserve you, but because you no longer need to explain your worth to someone who couldn't hold it when it was offered freely. You are not mad, you are not bitter, you are not empty, you are full, and you are free, and now you get to build differently. You choose relationships that mirror your peace, not just your passion. You walk away at the first sign of emotional inconsistency, not because you're cold, but because you finally know how warm love is supposed to feel. You speak softer now, not because you're unsure, but because you don't need to raise your voice when you trust your truth. You love with more precision, not less, because your heart has become sacred ground, and not everyone deserves a map to it. And when the world tells you to stay detached, to play it cool, to disappear until they come crawling back, you choose something else. You choose depth, intimacy, authenticity. You choose to be the man who doesn't need games to feel powerful. You become your own anchor, and the woman who meets you in this version of yourself, she will not meet a man trying to prove something. She will meet a man who knows exactly who he is, what he offers, and what he will never give away again just to feel chosen. You are no longer an echo of what she left behind. You are the presence of a man she was never ready to meet, and that is the real shift, so here you are. Not broken, not bitter, not waiting. You are whole, you are awake, you are finally home.